bulk of the conversation was regarding the size of the sign and the background colors, and the percentage of the shop and Farragut logo on the sign. The material, I don't want to say it was irrelevant, but for this, what I would call a very minor change, nobody would comment about it.
I would say the
Still have it affixed to the studded T-post, so it's purely just the material of the sign.
Yeah,
we would change it in all sections.
I think that the planning commission would probably be very thankful that you didn't come back
I would
for
be very
reconsideration.
With that said, just a point of clarity, we want to change the wording.
It would not just affect the commercial part of it. It would also affect all of the sign sections that deal with the churches has the same thing. And one of the things I would like to point out on page 5, letter C, the first C on the top of the page, we specifically state no banners. In the other two sections in the commercial, which is on page 3, letter H, we deleted the word banners because we were requiring banners. And the same with the church section. So we would add banners back in at that location. And then the changes with regards to D on page 3 and page 6, D also, we would clarify that all signs shall be a 10-ounce or 10-millimeter corrugated plastic. There's no grommets involved with this. Okay, we won't have grommets. And they'd be affixed to the studded T-post, which is really a fancy rebar. And then we would, yeah. So it's actually fairly minor, but that's what we would shoot for, as I would use this.
Thank you. Are you ready for a motion?
I had a question on that. And of course, as a longtime person interested in signage from an aesthetic standpoint, as I think a good majority of the homeowners of this town are, I'm glad to see that there's some coming along with a plan to put some things in place. Been a firm proponent of less is more when it comes to signage, and I think having some consistency of look and of size makes a lot of difference, and we can kind of avoid the garishness that exists along Cedar Bluff as an example on that side. I did have a question that was answered. Mr. Purvis touched on. I was curious what the definition is of celebratory special events, and I'm glad that's going to be worked on a little bit more. The question I had is what's going to be done by way of promotion and education of these changes, and especially reaching out to the not-for-profit organizations, the churches, making these folks aware of the process and of helping them and encouraging them to come along board, as it were, with the look and the approach and the theme of what we're trying to accomplish with this.
We did not require that the churches have the Shop Farragut logo on it for obvious reasons. Well, somewhat obvious reasons we didn't require that. We work real closely with all the churches here with regards to that, so I'm not really too concerned about the churches. The non-profit, the not-for-profit, I'm not really sure. I guess Allison probably will run into folks through the business end of things. And we kind of do mini training every time we talk to somebody. Spelling this out the way we have it spelled out will make it much easier when we deal with folks, because we can, specifically state, you have to have the legibility standards. This is what this means. If you're going to have outdoor things, you need to submit a little mini site plan. That doesn't mean something like what the Planning Commission reviews. It's something more like Dan Johnson's used to looking at with regard to tent permits and things like that. We just want to make sure that they're safe and not causing a problem. But as far as education goes, we're going to have you help us.
Well, and I wanted to speak to that a little bit. We've already really tried to bump up our communication efforts. We have sent at least 3 email blasts through a professional email service to over 200 people that are businesses, individuals, nonprofits, etc., putting this ordinance in front of them, letting them know about the change in material that was likely coming, sending it out on shop Farragut confirmations to remind people. Every opportunity we get, we're trying to put this in front of them to educate them in advance so that they don't come back after the fact and not be able to use their sign next year. So we've already tried to get a jump start on some of those education components, but that's certainly something that we'll continue with as well.
Website too as well, maybe even some good examples and some things to what we're not wanting to do.
That's a good idea.
Block out the name of the offending operation.
Got to vote on this.
I make a motion to approve ordinance 11-22 as attached.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next one is ordinance 11-23, ordinance to amend the Farragut Municipal Code, Title 14, Chapter 4, Sinkhole Ordinance, to clarify that once sinkholes have been identified by the Planning Commission and have been indicated on a plat or site plan, the appellate body is the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Now, this is a housekeeping measure for those of us that went through the creation of the sinkhole ordinance. It's like everything else when you read something. When you have a mindset of, well, this is obviously what it says because this is what we've talked about for the last 6 months, as we did in the case of the sinkhole ordinance, time passes and people who didn't go through that process read it, and there was some confusion about at what point in time does the Board of Zoning Appeals step up as the appellate body. So this came up primarily dealing with the farm at Willow Creek subdivision. When they came in with their preliminary plat, the sinkhole ordinance was in the creation stages, so they were not obligated to meet it at that point in time, but they were designing to meet what we all thought was going to be the ordinance. So the preliminary plat showed the sinkholes as was required in the subdivision regulations, but it did not show the 50-foot building setback. When the final plat was recorded and approved and recorded, the sinkhole ordinance had already been adopted by that point in time, and so the final plat showed the sinkholes and the 50-foot building setback. The key with this particular development, however, was at that point in time when they got a grading permit under the approval of their preliminary plat, there was not a requirement that we have now where we just say stay out of the sinkholes, leave them alone. It is known that if you alter a sinkhole, you can create another problem in the surrounding area. And so there were some sinkholes in the farm at Willow Creek that were kind of smoothed out. Well, if you are not from East Tennessee or you're not familiar with karst topography and sinkholes and things like that, you may see the sinkhole marked on the plat, but you drive out there and you're like, oh, well, that's not really there. And just because you throw some dirt on it, yes, it's still there. That's part of the conundrum with karst topography and trying to regulate it. And so, as I said, this was a housekeeping measure, and the intent and the goal, and we hope we accomplished that, is that we amended it as such to clarify that the Board of Zoning Appeals is the appellate body and at what point they step in. So we clarified in certain sections that after the Planning Commission has taken action and it's identified on the plat, then the Board of Zoning Appeals is the appellate body with regards to that. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of Ordinance 1123, and staff also recommends approval of this ordinance.
I'll move approval for this. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Last ordinance, ordinance 11-25, ordinance to amend the fiscal 2012 general fund and insurance fund budgets.
Yes, as you stated, ordinance 11-25 will amend the general fund and insurance budgets The general fund budget will be amended by increasing the appropriations to reflect an additional $29,390 for the supplemental retirement plan for the remaining 6 months of the current fiscal year. And the second item is for the insurance fund, and it will be amended by increasing appropriations by $433,538, and that was for the one-time contribution for the retirement benefits for the employees. And staff recommends approval of 11-25, amending the fiscal year 2012 general fund and insurance fund budgets.
I just have one quick question. Will you have the paperwork done in time for people to elect into it by January 1? I mean, will the...
I doubt we will, but what we're doing is budgeting.
We're good to go.
We're budgeting for 6 months. That's
Okay.
correct.
Thank you.
I have a first and second motions. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Town administrators report.
Mayor, I just have two quick special events that we're going to be held the week after Thanksgiving. One is going to be Tuesday, November the 29th at 6 o'clock. We're going to have our holiday tree lighting that the Farragut Press or Farragut Business Alliance is in charge of, and the town's sponsoring. It's going to be at Campbell Station Park. So I think it'll be a great event, and we look forward to having everybody out there. And then on December 1st, here at Town Hall, starting at 4:30, and I think going till 7 o'clock, we have our Celebrate the Season event